Do you dream of luxury and power? Do you believe in the glitter of the royal court, where every day is a feast and every night is a celebration? Forget it. Here, behind the golden gates, you will find no fairy tale, no glory. Here, life is endless filth, fear, and humiliation, where every breath is a trial and every minute is a struggle to survive. Here, you are nobody, and your name means nothing. All that awaits you in the palace is an exhausted body, stinking rags, stale bread, rotten teeth, and a gaze filled with despair. But before you settle in, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who's joined us. Now, get comfortable. We're about to begin. So, here you are. You, with your ridiculous hopes and hollow ambitions, standing at the edge of the royal palace for the very first time. If only someone had painted a true picture of what life at court really meant, perhaps you would have run as far as your dirty feet could carry you. But no, you, naive and hungry for approval, are drawn in by stories of gold, power, and the glow of candlelit banquets. The reality is, of course, much less poetic and substantially more humiliating. You never set out to become a courtier's lackey, not when you were a child, and the world was just a collection of tiny villages, each a day's walk apart, each the same shade of brown and misery. As a child, you watched the castle shimmer on the horizon and thought it was the sun itself, not knowing it was only a collection of gray stone blocks caked in pigeon droppings and the bones of those who had tried and failed before you. Still, every village needed its dreamer, and you were happy to oblige. The moment you step through the first iron gate, the palace itself seems to swallow you whole, as if you are nothing but a poorly chewed morsel left for the rats. The guards do not greet you. They stare at you with expressions somewhere between amusement and contempt. Perhaps they have seen too many like you, wide-eyed, hopeful, and deeply unaware of what is about to unfold. Your first taste of palace life is not gold, nor fine linen, nor honey cakes. No, it is the sharp smell of sweat that permeates every corridor, the sticky mud that stains the floor and never really goes away, and the endless lines of servants moving like ants, each one hunched by years of submission. Welcome to your new home. The first task you are given is as dull and degrading as one could imagine. Some dignitary from a neighboring realm has arrived unexpectedly, and you are told to help clean the privies. Yes, the royal latrines. The same hands that once imagined holding scepters and cups of sweet wine are now clutching a splintered wooden brush, scraping away what the nobility leaves behind. It is an honor, they tell you with a snicker. Every great man must start somewhere. The implication is obvious. You will end nowhere. As you work, the sounds of laughter drift down the corridors. Aristocrats and their children, warm by the fire, completely unaware of the filth that allows them to feel clean. Your own back aches, your knees throb, and you quickly discover that in this place, the word dignity is not only foreign, It is forbidden. You do not sleep in the guest rooms, nor anywhere near them. Your bed is a straw mat in a drafty hallway, sandwiched between the kitchen and the stables. You do not complain. Complaining is a privilege you have not yet earned. You are told very firmly that your silence is your best asset. Speak only when spoken to, and only say what is pleasing to the ear, says the head butler, whose mouth twists into a permanent sneer. You notice his eyes are always watching, always calculating, as if every word you say might be the last straw that sends you tumbling into the mud outside. Days pass. You scrub, you carry, you bow, you listen, but you never really hear because no one says anything real in this place. The air itself is thick with lies, gossip, and promises no one intends to keep. You realize, with growing horror, that every single person here is pretending. You pretend to like the work, to be grateful for the slop they give you for meals, to admire the faded tapestries and crumbling stone arches. The courtiers pretend to like the king, the queen, each other, and, most laughably, pretend not to notice the ever present smell of rot that leaks through every floorboard. Your clothing, once considered Sunday best in the village, now marks you as little more than a beggar. They dress you in livery, a stiff woolen tunic that itches in places you did not know could itch. It is always the wrong size, and it smells of other people's sweat. The colors are dull, the fabric cheap. You are grateful for the scraps because the only other option is nakedness. Every layer of clothing feels like another barrier between you and the life you thought you would have. There are moments, brief as candle flames, when you glimpse the court's supposed glamour, a flash of a jeweled necklace, the sweep of a velvet cloak, the distant sound of music from a room you are never allowed to enter. These moments hurt more than anything. They are not invitations, they are reminders. Reminders that you are not welcome, that you will always be on the outside, your nose pressed to the glass, watching others feast while you gnaw on bones. You soon learn the unwritten rules of survival. Never look a noble in the eye. Never speak unless spoken to. Never show hunger, ambition, or, worst of all, discontent. The penalty for forgetting these rules is swift and final. You see the consequences every day. The empty mat where another lackey once slept, the sudden silence in the corridor, the stories whispered at night of those who displeased the wrong person and vanished into the dungeons or, more likely, the river. Sometimes you think about leaving, but where would you go? Back to the village, to shame and ridicule, into the forest, to die among wolves and outlaws? No, you stay, not because you have hope, but because you have nothing else. And so, the days blend into each other, each one as gray and joyless as the last. This is your new life, a parade of pointless tasks, thankless labor, and the constant, gnawing knowledge that you are utterly, irrevocably replaceable. Welcome to the court, lackey. Your real education is just beginning. If you imagined, in your brief and innocent youth, that entering the palace would grant you some magical kinship with the powerful, you are quickly educated in the brutal reality of your insignificance. From your very first steps in the palace proper, you are forced to understand exactly where you belong, at the bottom, beneath the carefully polished boots of men and women who have never scrubbed a floor, never been cold, never known hunger except as a word in a prayer they barely remember. On your second day, having survived the humiliation of your first, you are summoned to the great hall. Someone of vague importance wants to see all the new faces, to remind themselves how many new backs there are to bear burdens, and how many new names can be safely forgotten. You shuffle in with the others, a stunted procession of boys and girls from surrounding villages, their eyes as wide and frightened as your own, their hands as raw and nervous. The hall itself is nothing like the stories you heard as a child. It is cold, always cold, no matter how many logs are thrown on the fire. The banners are faded, the walls pitted and scarred, the tapestries, which you imagined as glowing with color and heroic deeds, are thick with dust and mildew. The portraits of dead ancestors stare down, their painted eyes radiating disapproval, as if even in death they can smell the peasant stink that clings to you. You do not meet the king. The king is far too important for the likes of you. Instead, you meet the king's seneschal, a man with a face so lined and pinched it looks as though it was carved from old cheese and left out too long in the sun. He regards you all with undisguised boredom, his voice flat and thin as he lists the rules. Do not run. Do not speak. Do not be seen unless required. Do not, under any circumstances, look His Majesty in the face. You stand, shivering in your ill fitting tunic, while the great and good of the court drift past. Here is the Lord Chamberlain, whose only obvious accomplishment is a magnificent double chin and an ability to sweat even when standing still. Here is the Countess, draped in furs and lace, her eyes sharp as sinews, her fingers heavy with rings. She looks at you as one might look at a particularly persistent stain on a beloved cushion. There are others, the bishop, who smells of incense and something far less holy, the master of the hunt, whose boots are always muddy, and who takes a perverse joy in watching servants stumble, a clutch of royal cousins, all with hair like candle, grease and teeth too perfect to be natural. They walk in pairs or small, whispering groups, moving through the crowd as if parting a sea of vermin. You quickly realize that to the aristocracy, you are not just invisible, you are barely human. They talk about you as if you are not there at all. That one's too skinny. He will never last the winter. Look at her hands. She will ruin the linens. Another idiot from the northern villages. What use are they? These judgments fall like rain, impersonal and endless. The first lesson you learn is the art of looking without looking. Your gaze must always be slightly lowered, your eyes sliding away from any face of importance, your mouth pressed into a line that is neither a frown nor a smile. You practice standing perfectly still, hands clasped, feet together, back straight, trying to breathe as quietly as possible. Any sign of boredom, annoyance, or worst of all, ambition is enough to single you out for extra duties, a euphemism for chores so degrading and exhausting you will long for the relative peace of the privies. Still, you observe. What else is there to do? You watch the games of power played with glances and gestures, the way a single raised eyebrow from a duchess can send a footman scurrying, the way the queen's laughter is always a beat too late, too loud, too brittle. You notice that those who speak most about loyalty are the first to betray it, and those who proclaim their love for the kingdom do so only when someone powerful is listening. One morning, you are assigned to assist the pages serving the court at breakfast. You carry bread and watered wine to the long table, trying not to drop anything, trying not to be noticed. The courtiers barely acknowledge you, but when they do, it is always with the expectation that you have failed at something too slow, too clumsy, too ugly, too stupid. They throw scraps on the floor, not for you, but for the dogs that circle the tables, better fed and better cared for than you will ever be. Sometimes, late at night, you see the real court. When the candles burn low and the lords and ladies have drunk too much, they become less careful. You hear their laughter, sharp as broken glass, as they share stories of peasants who froze in the fields or thieves hanged at dawn. You listen to the way they speak about the land, about taxes and war, about famine, as if it were nothing but an unfortunate change in the weather. If you are lucky, you escape their notice. If you are unlucky, you become the butt of a joke, a toy for their amusement. There are games where the winner is whichever lackey can eat the most spoiled fruit or withstand the most slaps without crying out. You soon learn that it is safer to laugh along, even when the joke is at your expense, even when it leaves bruises that do not fade for weeks. The worst is when they pretend to be kind. A duchess might drop a copper coin in your palm, smiling sweetly, as if the gift is an act of divine generosity. You must thank her profusely, bow so low your back cracks, and pray she does not take offense at your gratitude. Sometimes the greatest insult is to be pitied. Days pass, weeks blur together. The palace never becomes warmer, nor does the food become more plentiful. The walls feel closer each day, the ceilings lower, the air more stale. You see faces come and go. Some vanish quietly, some in disgrace, a few in blood. You stay silent, you stay small. You came to the palace hoping for greatness, or at least for comfort. What you found is a world where greatness is a mask, comfort a lie, and the only truth is that you are disposable, as easy to replace as a broken broom or a dog that bites the wrong hand. This is your new world. You are among monarchs and aristocracy, and they will never let you forget what you are not. You may have thought that servitude at court would consist of labor, hauling buckets, scrubbing floors, fetching endless pitchers of sour wine. But no, the true labor of a lackey is far more spiritual. Here, at the heart of the kingdom, Your hands may grow calloused, but it is your soul that endures the real wear. Your principal duty is to please, not in any genuine sense, of course. No one at court is ever truly pleased, and certainly never by someone like you, but to make a display of flattery and fawning that will allow those above you to feel, if only for a moment, that they are as magnificent as they pretend. Each day begins the same way, with the sound of bells tolling a time that only matters to those who command. You rise from your mat, sore and half frozen, and stumble into your tunic. You must be presentable, which means your hair is pressed flat and your face scrubbed raw with the same water in which others have already washed their feet. You line up in the service corridor, shoulder to shoulder with your fellow unfortunates, and wait for the first orders. The head butler, whose sneer has become, for you, the universal signifier of coming misery, parades you before the chamberlain and his assistants. They are always looking for the smallest fault, a missing button, a stain on your sleeve, a cough that lingers. Even a misplaced sigh can be punished. If you are lucky, you escape with nothing more than a lecture. If unlucky, you are sent to the kitchens, or worse, to scrub the privies again. Your day, as the lowest of the low, is devoted not just to work, but to the subtle arts of flattery. Every word must be honey, every glance must convey awe and humility. The courtiers know this, of course, and take a special pleasure in your forced enthusiasm. They parade past, trailing perfumes and expensive silks, and you are expected to exclaim, quietly, just loud enough to be overheard, on their beauty, their wisdom, their extraordinary grace. If a lord's boots gleam, you must compliment their shine, even as you know they have been cleaned by the hands of 6 servants before you. If a lady's new hat perches at an absurd angle, you must praise its elegance, no matter how ridiculous she looks. If the king passes by, a rare event, but one not without danger, you must lower your eyes and murmur your undying loyalty, as if the briefest glance has filled you with religious awe. The most exhausting part is not the words you say, but the constant calculation: who is in favor today, whose vanity is most in need of polishing, who has fallen from grace and thus must be ignored, lest their misfortune taint your own luck. The hierarchy shifts daily, sometimes hourly, and a compliment to the wrong person can end your career, such as it is, before it has even begun. Meals are a parade of humiliation. You serve at table, offering dishes you would give your right hand to taste, and listen as the nobility complain about every mouthful. The stew is too thin, the bread too stale, the wine too sour. They push plates away, and you are expected to nod sympathetically, to agree that the world is full of tragedy when a pie is undercooked. Your hunger gnaws at you, but you must never let it show. To be caught stealing a scrap is to risk more than a beating. Between meals, you wait in corridors, poised for any whim. The lady in waiting needs a cushion fluffed. The Duke wants a message delivered to a mistress in the southern wing. A guest from some distant, irrelevant barony has lost his dog. Each errand must be accepted with a grateful bow, as if you have been granted the highest honor. If you hesitate, if you sigh, if your knees creak too loudly as you kneel, it is remembered. Everything is remembered. And then there are the small humiliations, the daily reminders that you are not a person, but an accessory, a walking shadow meant only to reflect glory back onto others. A noble woman drops her handkerchief, and you must scramble to retrieve it. A lord snaps his fingers, and you must run, not walk, to his side, ready to perform whatever trivial service he invents for his own amusement. Laughter is the background music of your existence, but it is never meant for you. Some, more clever than you, have mastered the art of flattery to the point of invisibility. They slip through the palace, always agreeable, never memorable, collecting favors and secrets in equal measure. You envy them, but you know you do not possess the talent for such cunning. You are too obvious, too honest in your misery, and so you are an easy target. Occasionally, the courtiers test your loyalty with impossible demands. To praise a poem that makes no sense, to admire a painting that is little more than mud smeared on canvas, to laugh at a joke that has no punchline. The real test is not your ability to flatter, but your willingness to debase yourself utterly and repeatedly in public and in private for the faintest chance of survival. You begin to forget who you are outside of this routine. Your thoughts grow small, your words carefully chosen. You do not dream of escape, not anymore, but only of making it through another day without drawing attention. Each evening, as you sink back onto your straw mat, you count your blessings. You have not been dismissed, beaten, or starved. Tomorrow, with luck, you will flatter and fawn again. Perhaps one day you tell yourself someone will notice your efforts. Perhaps a lord or lady will take pity, will raise you from the muck. But deep down, you know this is the greatest flattery of all, the lie you tell yourself so you do not give in to despair. By now, you have learned that proximity to the monarch is not a blessing, but a daily trial, one best survived by those who have perfected the art of blending into the background, as unobtrusive as a tapestry, as silent as dust. But your duties sometimes require you to step into the monarch's orbit, that cold, unpredictable sun around which all the lesser stars of the court revolve. You will discover soon enough that a monarch's touch, whether physical or metaphorical, is as likely to burn as to warm. You always know when the king is near. There is a shift in the air, a hush that descends on the corridors, as if even the mice have learned to hold their breath. Every servant and courtier straightens, every conversation stops, and you find yourself examining your own hands, hoping they are clean enough, steady enough to escape notice. The king's arrival is always heralded by the clatter of boots and the murmured warnings of higher servants, warnings to bow lower, to smile wider, to remember that your life is not your own, but a thing to be spent at the monarch's whim. The monarch's moods are legendary, the subject of whispered gossip and frantic speculation. Is he smiling today or glowering? Has he slept well or badly? Did the wine at supper agree with his stomach, or must someone be blamed for his indigestion? The wrong answer to these questions can mean anything from a day of relative peace to a public humiliation that will haunt you for months. You have seen what happens to those who forget themselves in his presence. There was the new footman who greeted the king too loudly, his voice cracking with nerves. He was sent to the kitchens, where the scullions made a sport of tormenting him until he disappeared. There was the laundress who dropped a handkerchief while curtsying and was made to kneel for hours in the courtyard, the mud soaking through her dress, while courtiers walked by pretending not to see. You learn by watching others suffer, and every lesson is a warning carved into your memory. The monarch's attention, when it falls on you, is a thing to be dreaded. If he is in a generous mood, he may deign to pat your head or ruffle your hair as though you are a favored dog. The assembled court laughs, and you laugh too, though you do not feel the joke. If the monarch is irritable, a careless word can bring a slap or a scolding, or worse, a casual, dismissive wave of the hand that leaves you feeling smaller than you already are. You are always careful never to look directly at the monarch's face. It is a face made for portraits, painted and repainted until it no longer resembles a person but an idea. Up close, you see the cracks in the illusion, the wrinkles beneath the powder, the way the mouth droops when he thinks no one is looking, the quick, suspicious glances he throws at everyone, as if expecting betrayal at every turn. You are reminded that kings are made by fear as much as by blood. The queen, too, is a force to be reckoned with, though her touch is colder and her words sharper. She never raises her voice. She does not need to. A single raised eyebrow from the queen is enough to ruin your entire week. She notices everything: a loose thread, an uneven bow, a shadow of hesitation in your step. Where the king's punishments are theatrical, hers are surgical, small humiliations that cut deep and leave no visible mark. At court, you learn that the monarchs thrive on your abasement. Your role is to amuse, to flatter, to provide a human backdrop to their little dramas. When the king is feeling playful, he will demand songs and stories. Your mind races to remember something, anything, that might please him, knowing that a poorly told tale will only provide new material for the courtier's ridicule. Sometimes, if he is feeling especially cruel, he will ask you to dance to the delight of the assembled nobility, who watch you stumble and blush with the same interest they might show to a performing monkey. But worst of all is the knowledge that your position is utterly dependent on their whim. You are praised one day for your quick wit, only to be mocked the next for your clumsiness. Any hint of pride is swiftly punished. You are there to be useful and never to forget your place. You have seen others, too bold, too clever, too hopeful, draw the monarch's eye for all the wrong reasons. Their rise is swift and dazzling, their fall even swifter and far more painful. The courtiers watch you constantly, eager to see who will stumble, who will rise, who will disappear. The more dangerous among them offer advice, always laced with poison, The king likes to be amused, but never corrected. The queen appreciates silence more than apologies. Remember, you are not here to be noticed. You are here to make others feel important. So you become adept at shrinking yourself, making yourself useful, but never memorable, clever, but never too clever, silent, but never sullen. Your life is a balancing act performed on a knife's edge, with every day bringing a fresh test of your ability to endure. At night, when you lie on your straw mat, listening to the distant music of yet another banquet, you wonder if there is anyone at court who truly enjoys the monarch's favor, or if everyone is simply waiting their turn to be shamed. You suspect the answer is both, and so you survive day after day by perfecting the art of being invisible and indispensable, of receiving both caresses and humiliations with the same practiced smile. This is how you live at the feet of royalty, always beneath them, always watching the shadows for your own. You have survived long enough now to realize that the greatest threat at court is not hunger or cold, nor even the unpredictable monarchs, but the other people who call this festering palace home. The walls themselves seem to vibrate with secrets. Every corner, every corridor, every shadowed alcove is a stage for intrigue. Here, games are played with lives, and the stakes are always fatal, though rarely for those with the means to move the pieces. Your job, whether you like it or not, is to become a pawn. And the one lesson all pawns eventually learn is that pawns are made to be sacrificed. You once thought that being a lackey meant obeying clear orders. Fetch this, clean that, flatter him, amuse her. That was a lie. The real work at court is navigating an ever shifting landscape of alliances and betrayals, of whispered promises and veiled threats. You learn to listen twice as much as you speak. You learn that what is said is never what is meant, and that what is meant is rarely what is said aloud. The day you are first drawn into intrigue is not marked by fanfare. It is just another dreary morning, the kind when fog presses against the windows and the fires refuse to warm the stones. The lady in waiting, whose gaze is as cold as winter, beckons you with a flick of her jeweled finger. She hands you a sealed note, no name, no crest, only a waxy red blob pressed by an anonymous signet. You do not ask questions. You deliver the note to the steward in the south wing, as instructed, and think no more of it. You do not realize that you have just played your part in the opening move of someone else's game. From that day forward, you find yourself drawn deeper into the labyrinth. Courtiers with sly smiles and too sweet voices begin to notice you, though never in public. They slip you coins or the promise of a future favor in exchange for carrying a message or delivering a harmless trinket or watching who enters which door at what hour. At first, you tell yourself you are above such things, but soon enough you realize that everyone is complicit. The only difference is who gets caught. You become the eyes and ears for those who are too important or too afraid to risk their own necks. You see things you should not see, the chamberlain whispering with the queen's brother behind a tapestry, the bishop exchanging purses with a merchant from the city, a young lord fleeing the ladies' quarters at dawn, his tunic inside out, and his face ashen. You know better than to speak of what you see. Silence at court is the only true currency. But silence, too, is dangerous. It marks you as trustworthy, and those who are trusted are often called upon to betray. One night, the master of the hunt corners you near the kitchens, the reek of ale thick on his breath. He asks if you have seen the Countess after midnight. You have, but you feign ignorance. His eyes narrow, and he mutters something about loyalty before stalking off. You do not sleep that night, replaying the moment again and again, wondering if you have made an enemy or a friend or both. You begin to realize that your life is not your own. Every errand, every whispered word, every look is a move in a game you do not understand. The smallest misstep can bring disaster. You watch as another lackey, one who boasted a little too loudly or failed to hide his smirk at the wrong moment, vanishes from his post, his absence explained by nothing more than a shrug and a muttered, "He was not suited for court life." You learn to keep your face neutral, your voice low, your opinions to yourself. It is not only the nobility who play these games. The servants, too, have their rivalries and alliances, their plots and counterplots. The kitchen boys trade gossip for extra scraps. The scullery maids hoard secrets like jewels. The head butler, always so precise and aloof, is rumored to keep a ledger of every favor, every slight. You do not doubt it. Even the palace cats seem to pick sides, curling up in the laps of those with power and scratching those who fall out of favor. There is no escape from the intrigue. Even the simplest tasks are fraught with danger. You are told to deliver a letter, but is it truly a message or a trap? You are asked to watch the hall, but are you spying or being set up as the fall guy for someone else's crime? You become paranoid, seeing plots everywhere, suspecting everyone. And what is yet? Your suspicion is justified. You have seen too many faces disappear to believe in innocence. The worst part is the uncertainty. No one tells you the rules because the rules change with the players. One day, you are praised for your discretion. The next, you are threatened for the very same quality. To survive is to be constantly alert, to trust no one, not even yourself. You begin to understand the true nature of power at court. It is not about crowns or titles, not about land or gold. It is about information and the willingness to use it. You are not merely a pawn. You are a vessel for secrets, a carrier of schemes, a potential witness or accomplice in 1,000 small betrayals. And you know, as all pawns know, that one day you will be sacrificed gladly, carelessly, and without a second thought. And yet, you play your part. What else is there to do? You pretend not to hear what you hear, not to see what you see. You smile when you are told to smile, nod when you are told to nod. You carry your secrets like stones, heavy and silent, knowing that to drop one is to drown. This is the game. You are in it, whether you want to be or not, and there is no way out. If you once believed that fear was reserved for moments of genuine danger, a wolf in the woods, a fire in the thatched roof, the knell of a funeral bell, you now know the true genius of court life is its ability to cultivate a constant background dread as steady as your own heartbeat. At first, you expect fear to come and go, perhaps to spike with the monarch's moods or to ebb with the passing of some new scandal. But in the palace, fear is not a visitor, it is a resident. It eats with you, sleeps with you, walks beside you down every corridor, and it never, ever leaves. You learn to live with it, not because you are brave, but because you are not given the choice. Fear is as much a part of your routine as bowing and scraping. Each morning begins with that moment of hesitation as you awaken on your straw mat, the cold stone under your spine. Is today the day you slip up? Will this be the day someone notices you frowning, or hears you mutter a complaint, or simply decides they dislike the look of your face? You have seen how quickly a life here can change, from servitude to squalor to silence, all within the space of a single, careless moment. Fear shapes your posture, your voice, the way you hold your hands. You are always a little too careful, a little too polite, a little too quick to agree. It is not enough to obey. You must anticipate, must always sense the mood of the room, the direction of the wind. It is the waiting that wears you down, the waiting for the next outburst, the next accusation, the next time your name is spoken just a little too loudly. You become expert in the small, invisible arts of survival. You listen for footsteps in the hall, learning to recognize them by weight and rhythm. This is the Queen's lady, gliding and quick. That, the head butler, heavy and deliberate. The king's boots, oddly light for such a heavy man, always seem to approach from behind. The noble children, running and shrieking, are a warning sign themselves. The court is at play, and when the court is at play, someone will be chosen for their entertainment. You pray it is not you. Fear grows in layers. The first is the fear of punishment, lashes, dismissal, exile. These are not an empty threats. You have seen the marks on other servants' backs, the bruises hastily covered by ragged sleeves. You have helped clean out the corner room after a lackey's things were bundled and tossed away, never to be spoken of again. You have heard, in the deep hours of night, the moans from the lower cellars, where discipline is administered by men who smile too easily and whose hands are never clean. The second layer is the fear of blame. In the court, blame is a floating disease, contagious and deadly, attaching itself to the nearest available host. It matters little if you are innocent. If the stew is spoiled, if a jewel goes missing, if a guest is insulted, the culprit is whoever lacks the protection of a powerful patron. You learn never to be alone, to always have a witness to your innocence, to move in pairs and trios like frightened birds. There is also the fear of being noticed. At first, you think visibility is the route to favor. You quickly realize that being noticed is often the first step to being despised, or worse, envied. The court is filled with those who rose too high and fell too quickly, their wings clipped by the very attention they once courted. You hide your cleverness, your opinions, your small acts of kindness. Even your laughter is carefully measured, never louder than the laughter of those above you, never at the wrong moment. But perhaps the deepest layer is the fear that comes from within, the fear that you are becoming what the palace demands of you. Each day, you watch yourself shrink, becoming cautious, suspicious, joyless. You no longer tell the jokes you once loved. You do not trust even your closest fellow servants. Your sleep is light, full of uneasy dreams. Sometimes you wake in the darkness, heart pounding, unable to recall whether the terror was real or imagined. You notice, too, the toll fear takes on those around you, the older servants, stooped and silent, who flinch at sudden noises, the young pages, who have already learned not to cry even when struck, the cooks, whose hands shake when the steward enters, the way everyone talks in riddles and half truths, always careful to reveal nothing. There are rituals for managing fear. Some carry charms or whisper prayers under their breath, as if ancient words might soften the blow of a noble's anger. Others simply disappear for a while, hiding in the storerooms or kitchens, waiting for trouble to pass. You find yourself making bargains with fate. If you get through the day without a mistake, you will be careful tomorrow and the day after and the day after that. The palace is a machine, and fear is the grease that keeps its wheels turning. The nobility thrive on it, perhaps even more than on their wine and gossip. They sense it, feed off it, sometimes stoking it for sport. The king's laughter, echoing down the hall, is as much a weapon as the captain's whip. The courtier's smiles are always edged with malice. The queen's silence when you pass her is so icy that it hurts more than any shouted curse. And so you live, day by day, in a world where every shadow hides a threat, where every kindness might be a trap, where your best hope is to be overlooked, forgotten, left alone for just one more night. You become a master of caution, an artist of humility, a silent ghost gliding from task to task. It is a strange skill, this life built on fear. You will never be proud of it, but you will never lose it either. In the palace, fear is as much a part of you as your own shadow. And as you lie awake, listening to the wind moan through the cracks, you wonder if you will ever remember how it felt to be unafraid. You might have believed once that only soldiers and beggars carried the marks of hardship. You soon learn that court life brands the body just as thoroughly as the soul. There is nothing romantic about the wounds you collect in royal service. They are neither badges of honor nor scars of noble sacrifice. They are simply the byproducts of endless, thankless labor, of bad beds and worse food, of chill winds and stone floors, of too many hours on your feet and too few moments of rest. And unlike those inflicted by the sword, your wounds will not be sung about. They will not even be noticed. Your hands are the first to betray you. Once they were soft enough, perhaps even a little pudgy, the hands of a youth who dreamed of greater things. Now they are a patchwork of blisters, calluses, and half healed cuts. Splinters from the coarse broom handles, burns from the kitchen stoves, scrapes from dragging heavy buckets down endless corridors. The nails are never clean, and every so often one turns black and falls away, a small, private horror that no one but you will ever mourn. Your back is next. No one warns you how heavy the palace truly is. There is always something to carry: barrels of wine, trunks of linen, baskets of soiled clothes, firewood by the armful. The noblemen sneer at you for your posture, not realizing, or perhaps not caring, that years of lifting and hauling have bent you nearly double. Your shoulders throb at night, a constant ache that no poultice relieves. Sometimes, when you finally collapse onto your straw mat, you lie awake and wonder what it must be like to move without pain. Your feet fare worst of all. Shoes are handed out at the whim of the steward, and you soon learn to expect little. Often you are given someone else's cast offs, shoes too big or too small, split at the heel, holes letting in water and mud. Blisters bloom and burst, toes rub raw. In winter, you wake to find your feet numb and blue, and in the summer, they swell with heat and fatigue. Fungus creeps in between the toes. You ignore it, like everyone else, because there is nothing to be done. You are not alone in your suffering. The palace is filled with wounded bodies. The kitchen girl's arms are always mottled with burns. The grooms limp from poorly healed breaks. The laundry maids cough and wheeze from the damp. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of the older servants, those who have survived longest, each one bent, gray, their faces lined like dried apples, hands twisted by years of cold and toil. Their wounds are as much a part of them as their voices, which are rarely raised above a whisper. The privies, so often your charge, are a hazard all their own. The stones are slick with filth. The air is a cloud of flies and stench. You slip, you fall, you cut your arms and legs on hidden shards of glass or broken tile. No one thanks you for cleaning. They simply complain when the work is not done. Sometimes you must empty the chamber pots of nobles, too proud or too lazy to walk the length of a corridor. The contents slosh and spill, and the stink clings to you long after you have tried to wash it away. Wounds fester easily in the palace. Cuts grow red and angry. Blisters fill with pus. Splinters burrow deep and refuse to come out. There are no doctors for the likes of you. If you are lucky, the kitchen crone will give you a scrap of rag and a spoonful of some bitter paste. If not, you do what all lackeys do. You grit your teeth, wrap the wound as best you can, and carry on. You have seen servants lose fingers, even hands, to infection. The solution is simple. Another lackey is found. Another pair of hands takes your place. Illness, too, is ever present. Coughs and chills run through the servants' quarters like wildfire. Lice infest your hair and clothes. Fleas bite your ankles until they bleed. In the worst seasons, fever and ague sweep the palace, picking off the weakest. Nobles are whisked away to clean rooms with fresh straw and sweet wine. You and your fellows are left behind, coughing into your hands, hoping to survive, knowing that if you do not, no one will notice you are gone. You sometimes envy the palace dogs. They, at least, are washed and fed. When they limp, someone cares. When you limp, you are told to hurry. When your fingers split open and bleed, you are handed more work. When you stumble, you are kicked aside. It is not that anyone wishes you ill. No, it is simply that your suffering is invisible, part of the scenery, no more important than the cracked stones or the rain leaking through the roof. There are moments of respite, rare as they are. Perhaps the sun shines through the window, warming your sore shoulders for a brief hour. Perhaps a kind cook slips you an extra crust of bread, or a fellow servant shares a stolen apple. These small mercies do not heal, but they help you endure. You rub ointment on your hands and hope they will heal before the next round of work. You prop up your swollen feet and dream, if only for a moment, of shoes that fit and beds that do not bite. You look at the courtiers, their skin soft and pale, their hands unmarked. They never notice the grime under your nails, the limp in your step, the way you wince as you bow. If they did, perhaps they would laugh. Or perhaps worse, they would simply turn away, already forgetting you as they reach for their wine. In the palace, wounds are the price of survival, the cost of remaining unseen. You carry them with you always, hidden under your livery, as much a part of court life as the music and the lies. You have learned to endure them. What you have not yet learned, what you suspect you never will, is how to make them matter. One of the great lies about court life, perpetuated by minstrels, storytellers, and those who have never scrubbed a royal floor, is that palaces are overflowing with endless feasts, platters piled high with roasted meat, golden loaves, sugared fruit, and rivers of wine. You quickly discover this is true if you happen to be a noble, a favored pet, or a rat. For you and the rest of the palace's working underclass, food is less a pleasure and more an ordeal, a reminder each day of just how far you stand from the overflowing tables in the grand hall. Your day begins, if you are lucky, with a lump of yesterday's bread. It is as hard as old timber and twice as tasteless. You gnaw on it, feeling the grit of flour and the occasional crunch of a weevil. You do not complain. Those who complain are given nothing, or worse, are told to eat the sweepings from the floor. The bread sometimes arrives with a smear of rancid fat, or a few shreds of cheese, gray at the edges, but more often it is simply bread, if you can even call it that, since it seems to contain more stone and straw than wheat. On rare mornings, you are granted a bowl of thin, watery porridge. It steams, but only because it is boiling with yesterday's dishwater. The cook says it is fortified for your health, which is to say, she has tossed in whatever leftovers failed to make it to the noble's breakfast. flecks of onion, the heel of a carrot, the unidentifiable shreds of some grayish root. If you taste anything richer, you know it is a mistake, and that someone in the kitchen will pay for their generosity later. For the noon meal, there is stew, always the same, always different. It changes color with the seasons, brown in winter, greenish in spring, and always laced with a mysterious slick of fat that rises to the top like oil in a puddle. Some days it is thin enough to drink, other days so thick you wonder if a spoon might stand up in it, if you had a spoon. The stew contains meat, or so you are told. Mostly, it is bones and gristle, with the occasional chunk of something that could be either root or rat, depending on your luck and the mood of the kitchen. Sometimes a feather floats by, a reminder that nothing in the palace is ever truly clean. You eat quickly, not out of hunger, but necessity. Food disappears fast, and there are always more mouths than bowls. Elbows are sharp, patience short, and dignity non existent. The older servants defend their scraps fiercely, and the younger ones learn to snatch and run, always alert for a cuff to the ear. You do not linger, you do not savor. To linger is to risk losing what little you have. Between meals, your stomach churns with a mixture of hunger and dread. The smell of roasting meat wafts down from the great hall, mingling with the sharper odors of spilled wine and sweat. You glimpse trays of pies and pasties, platters of glistening fruit, golden puddings, jellied fish. These are not for you. If you are fortunate, you might catch a scrap fallen to the floor, a gnawed bone, a hunk of crust, or finish what a noble has refused, though you do so quickly, before someone with more authority decides you have overstepped. Dinner, if it can be called that, is much the same as lunch. A cold slab of whatever was left from the midday pot, a handful of beans or peas, a half mug of sour ale, or more often, tepid water drawn from the same barrels the horses drink from. The water is always suspect. You have seen what falls into the barrels, and you try not to think about it as you sip, grimacing at the taste of iron and moss. Wine is a fantasy. You see casks rolled through the cellars, watch goblets raised in endless toasts, but your lips never touch the stuff unless it is the dregs drained from a discarded cup. Once, during a festival, you are allowed a swallow of sweet spiced wine, thick as syrup and twice as intoxicating. The taste lingers for days, and you find yourself daydreaming about it when the hunger grows worst, even as you know you will never taste it again. Meal times are an exercise in humility. You eat crouched on a bench or standing by a wall, sometimes with a group, more often alone. There is no conversation, no laughter, only the scraping of bowls and the hollow silence of the hungry. If someone tries to tell a joke, it is cut short by the clatter of a pan or the sharp voice of the steward reminding you that talking is a privilege for those who pay for it. Holidays are a particular torment. The palace fills with the smells of roasting meat, honeyed cakes, platters of fruit, confections as bright as jewels. The nobles gorge themselves until they are sick, then demand music and dancing from the exhausted servants. You, if you are lucky, may be handed the leftovers, gnawed bones, half eaten pies, jugs of wine diluted with dishwater. These scraps are fought over, divided with the cunning of thieves and the desperation of the starving. Hunger becomes a companion, as constant as the fear you have already learned. Your dreams are filled with food, though the reality is always disappointment. Sometimes, when you are cleaning the privies, you find crusts and bones thrown away by nobles too picky to finish even their own delicacies. You pocket them if no one is watching. Pride fades quickly in the face of hunger. There are, of course, those who fare even worse: the beggars at the gate, the children in the alleys, those who have fallen from grace and now sleep under the open sky. You tell yourself that you are lucky. You eat, at least. Most days, you almost believe it. Still, the contrast is impossible to ignore. The nobles waste what you would give anything to taste. They complain that the wine is too warm, the meat too tough, the bread too stale. They spit out what would be, for you, a feast. You watch, silent, always hungry, always on the outside, always reminded that the palace is not your home and its bounty is not for you. You learn to eat quickly, quietly, thankfully, and without hope of more. In the palace, food is not a pleasure. It is just one more way to remind you of your place. You might once have imagined the palace as a theater of beauty, silks, velvet, and gold. You pictured yourself, perhaps, in fine livery, your hair shining, your face glowing with health, passing through marble halls like a character from a legend. Reality, as always, is a far less flattering tailor. Your clothing is never your own. The first indignity comes when they strip you of the only garments you brought from home, plain, yes, but familiar, and washed by the same hands that raised you. These are taken for safekeeping, which means you will never see them again. Instead, you are issued the uniform of your station, a tunic of rough, itchy wool, dyed a shade that could generously be described as brown, but is more accurately described as mud. It is too big at the shoulders and too short at the wrists, and always smells faintly of sweat and old straw. You are told, in no uncertain terms, that appearance is everything, and that every detail is a reflection of your respect for the palace and, by extension, the monarch. Your tunic must be kept as clean as possible, a Herculean labor when your work ensures it is constantly stained by grease, ash, wine, or worse. The smallest spot is a cause for a tongue lashing from the head butler or a slap from a noble who believes you have soiled their view of the world. Trousers are made of the same miserable fabric. In winter, they are too thin, and in summer, they stick to your legs with sweat. The seams are coarse, and you quickly develop rashes where the cloth rubs your skin raw. Sometimes you are given a belt, but only if you are considered likely not to lose it, which is rarely. Most days, you tie a piece of rope around your waist and try not to think about how easily It could be used to hang you. You are expected to wear shoes at all times. The shoes, as with everything, are designed for economy, not comfort. Stiff leather, cracked at the heel, stuffed with scraps of cloth or straw to keep them on your feet. The soles are thin, and you feel every pebble, every splinter, every cold tile as you walk. You patch the holes with whatever you can find, and when the weather turns, you dread the weeks of damp socks and the blisters that come with them. Headwear is an afterthought. In winter, you are permitted a woolen cap, but only outdoors. Indoors, bareheadedness is a sign of humility. You learn to wrap your scarf twice around your neck and hope no one notices. Hair must be kept neat, which means short and washed, but with what? You scrape water from the bottom of a barrel, sharing it with three others, and rub your scalp with lye soap until it stings. Lice are inevitable. You pick them out at night and hope the others do not notice. Cleanliness is enforced not out of concern for your health, but for the comfort of the aristocracy. You are expected to wash every day, or at least to appear as though you have. The laundry maid hands you a rag and a bucket of gray water. There is never enough soap. The water is cold and smells of rot. Still, you scrub your face and hands until they are red, pinching your cheeks to give them the faintest hint of color. Any sign of vanity is dangerous. You see what happens to those who try to make themselves look above their station. The girl who braided her hair too elaborately had it chopped off with kitchen shears. The boy who wore a brooch, found, he swore, in a gutter, was accused of theft and beaten. You learn to look plain, to blend into the background, to avoid drawing the wrong kind of attention. Your only ornament is your silence. The nobles, meanwhile, parade in silks and furs, their collars stiff with lace, their jewels catching every glint of sunlight. Their shoes are polished by hands like yours, their gloves softer than your pillow, their perfumes sweet enough to cover the stench of fear and sweat that fills every hallway. They expect you to admire them, to notice and comment on their finery, but never to imitate. You are a backdrop, not a guest. If a thread is loose on your sleeve, if your hair is untidy, if a button is missing, you are punished. The punishments are as creative as they are cruel, sent to clean the stables, ordered to kneel in the hallway until your knees bruise, forced to scrub chamber pots until your fingers bleed. The worst punishment, always, is dismissal. One day you are here, the next you are gone, your uniform stripped away, your body shoved out the gate, your place already filled by someone else. The irony, of course, is that no matter how hard you try, you will never look good enough for those in power. Your face is always too plain, your skin too rough, your clothes too shabby. If you look too clean, you are accused of idleness, too dirty, of laziness. You find yourself locked in an endless, unwinnable battle with dirt, sweat, and the impossible expectations of people who have never washed their own feet. You begin to understand that the true function of your attire is not to protect you from the elements or even to cover your nakedness, but to remind you and everyone else of your place. Each frayed cuff, each patched knee, each muddy hem is a signal, a warning, really, that you are here to serve, not to live. And so you learn to be invisible, to take up as little space as possible, to let your clothes do the talking. They say, loudly and clearly, that you are replaceable, expendable, and utterly beneath notice. You keep your head down, your hands folded, your back straight. You dress not to please yourself, but to avoid displeasing others, knowing all the while that there is no safety, not in rags or in riches. In this splendid palace, appearance is everything, and for you, it is a daily lesson in humiliation. There is a special myth reserved for the women of the court, one spun by poets and peddlers, by eager boys and disappointed old men alike. You were taught, perhaps, to imagine these women as delicate flowers, drifting through gilded chambers, fragrant and passive, their only power lying in a fluttered eyelash or a whispered word. You quickly learn that reality is something else entirely. The women of the palace are neither flowers nor angels. They are hawks, serpents, and spiders, wrapped in velvet and lace, their claws carefully sheathed but never truly hidden. For you, the lowliest lackey, your relationship with the court's women is a daily lesson in both terror and awe. Their authority is absolute within their own spheres. The queen, her ladies, the wives and daughters of noblemen, all rule their domains with an iron will, policed by gossip and upheld by threats, both subtle and overt. The rules they enforce are as invisible as they are unbreakable, and you learn quickly that a misstep in the orbit of a courtly woman can cost far more than a bruised pride. Your first real encounter comes on a morning when you are ordered to the Queen's solar, a chamber filled with the filtered light of colored glass and the scent of wilting flowers. The Queen sits at the center, a figure of stillness and cold authority, her eyes dark as storm clouds. Around her, the ladies in waiting move like a shoal of minnows, quick, alert, hungry for scraps of favor or amusement. They do not speak to you, not directly, but you feel their eyes flicker over your figure, measuring, judging, filing away your flaws for future use. The queen herself rarely addresses anyone below the level of a baron, and when she does, it is with words as sharp as a butcher's knife. She asks you to fetch a letter, and you bow so low your back cracks. You move with careful, silent efficiency, never meeting her gaze. Still, when you trip over the hem of a tapestry, the smallest snort of amusement escapes from the cluster of noble women. It is a warning as much as a laugh. You are a plaything, a background prop, a living proof of their power. The ladies of the court are artists of seduction, but their art has nothing to do with love. You watch them flirt with lords and knights, their smiles always just shy of genuine, their words laced with double meanings and private jokes. They are courtiers, equals, in every way but name, capable of ruining a man's prospects with a glance, of lifting another with a whispered promise. You witness, with a mixture of awe and dread, the ways they weave webs of favors and debts, how they reward and punish, how they gather secrets the way a miser gathers coins. You soon realize that you are useful to them, but never indispensable. A well placed compliment, my lady, your gown outshines the dawn, can earn you a coin or a crumb. An ill timed stare, a nervous stammer, or a laugh at the wrong moment earns a different reward. A scathing remark delivered for all to hear, a whispered accusation of insolence, a demotion to the rank of chamber pot scrubber. The courtly women do not forget slights, real or imagined. Their vengeance is slow, methodical, and often disguised as mercy. Danger, for you, comes as much from kindness as from cruelty. Sometimes a lady will take an interest in you, offering sly questions or a playful touch. You know better than to think this is affection. You are a novelty, a diversion, a safe receptacle for their boredom. To accept their attention too eagerly is to invite rumors, and rumors are as deadly as knives. If you become the subject of talk, your reputation is ruined, and your life becomes a parade of suspicion and ridicule. But to reject a lady's interest is just as perilous. You must balance on the knife edge between acceptance and refusal, politeness and resistance, humility and servility. You learn to laugh softly, to flatter skillfully, to disappear the moment your usefulness has passed. The game is exhausting, and you know that losing it means more than a wounded pride. Behind every smile, every gift, every whispered word, there is the threat of exposure. The women of the palace know every secret before the men have even learned there is something to hide. They are the guardians of scandal, the keepers of liaisons and betrayals. Their network of maids, seamstresses, and confidants extends to every corner of the palace, and you, as a lackey, are both a potential asset and a convenient scapegoat. Sometimes you are called upon to deliver messages, notes folded and sealed with perfume, a bouquet left outside a locked door, a glove returned to the wrong owner. Each errand is a risk, for you can never be sure if you are facilitating a harmless intrigue or setting the stage for blackmail, disgrace, or worse. If the secret you carry is discovered, it is you who will be blamed, never the sender or the recipient. The older women are the most terrifying. They are past the need for pretense and have turned their cunning to survival and control. A single word from a dowager countess can end your career before it begins, and she will not even pause in her embroidery as she gives the order. You learn to listen, to anticipate, to sense the shifting tides of their favor before you are swept away by them. And so you move through the palace, a shadow among shadows, careful always to keep your head bowed and your words sweet. You know your place in their world, useful, invisible, disposable. You learn to respect the power of the courtly women, to fear it, and above all, to survive it. In the palace, seduction is a weapon, and threats are the currency. And you, at the mercy of both, are left only with your silence and your scars. If ever there were a hidden engine that drives the palace and all its pale, hurrying inhabitants, it is not royal decree or divine right, but the ceaseless flow of bribes. They come in all shapes and sizes as coins slipped into open palms, as loaves of bread, as promises of protection, as hints and half spoken threats. In the stories, bribes are the tools of thieves and traitors. At court, they are the price of simply staying alive. For you, the bottom rung of a crooked ladder, the system of bribes is both a language and a lifeline. You enter it not by choice, but by necessity. Your wages, if such a word can be used for the handful of coppers tossed your way each week, are never enough. They vanish almost as soon as you receive them, spent on stale bread, a patch for your shoes, or on a desperate bribe of your own to the steward, hoping to avoid the worst duties. Everyone pays, everyone receives. The only question is who pays more and who receives better. Your first lesson in bribery comes early, taught not by a noble, but by another servant, a kitchen boy only a year older, already old in the eyes and cautious in the hands. He tells you quietly, over a shared crust, that nothing in the palace moves without a coin to grease the wheels. You want extra stew at dinner? Pay the cook's helper. You want the softest straw for your mat? Slip a penny to the laundry maid. You want to avoid the graveyard shift, the coldest hours of night? Share your ration of ale with the watchman. At first you resist. It feels wrong, a corruption of the order you were taught to believe in. But the alternative is harsher. You watch as those who refuse to play the game are left with the worst jobs, the smallest scraps, the coldest corners. Soon, your scruples evaporate, replaced by the simple desire to avoid unnecessary misery. You learn to hoard every coin, to stash crumbs and crusts, to offer favors when you have nothing else. The system is ruthless, but at least it is honest. It makes no pretense of fairness. The nobles, of course, operate on a grander scale. You witness lords trading jewels and titles, ladies slipping velvet purses across banquet tables, priests offering blessings in exchange for gold. Bribes flow upwards as well as downwards, and those who control the flow control everything. The head butler receives tributes from the stewards. The stewards collect from the cooks and the chambermaids. At the top of this pyramid, the king and queen accept gifts from every corner of the realm: lands, livestock, barrels of wine, all, of course, for the good of the kingdom. Even the most trivial favor is paid for. You fetch water for a footman, and he pays you with a warning: the master is in a foul mood. You give your spot by the fire to a scullery maid, and she lets you in on which leftovers are safe to eat. If you want to send a letter home, you must barter with the clerk who handles the post, paying in copper or gossip or the promise of future help. Every kindness is a transaction, every interaction a negotiation. Some bribes are obvious: a coin pressed into your palm, a loaf hidden under your coat. Others are subtler: a smile from the cook might mean an extra spoonful, but only if you keep her secret about the missing duck. A nod from the steward is a promise to look the other way, provided you remember who to thank next time. The lines between generosity and extortion blur, and you begin to mistrust even the rare moments of genuine kindness. In the palace, nothing is ever truly free. The system breeds suspicion and resentment. You watch as those with connections rise, while the unlucky and the unskilled are left behind. Sometimes you catch yourself envying the petty tyrants who rule over their little empires of favors and threats. You wonder if you could ever be like them, if the price of comfort is becoming as hard and cold as the stones beneath your feet. Yet, even in bribery, there is hierarchy. Your bribes buy you small mercies, less filth, less hunger, fewer blows. The nobles use theirs to buy silence, to erase crimes, to secure positions for their kin. You might earn a knight's peace. They earn a fortune, a title, a place at the king's table. The rules are not the same for everyone, and the more you play, the more you see how little the game cares for your effort. The risk, of course, is ever present. Give the wrong bribe to the wrong person, and you may find yourself accused of theft, or worse, treason. Favors are called in at inconvenient times, and a debt unpaid can mean disgrace or dismissal. You have seen servants disappear for less. You learn to keep careful records, if only in your head, of who owes whom and for what. Memory in the palace is worth more than gold. There are moments, fleeting and dangerous, when you wonder what would happen if you refused to play. Could you survive on honesty alone? You know the answer. Those who try are driven out, or broken, or simply starved into submission. Even the priests, those supposed champions of virtue, are not immune. You have seen them accept bribes for prayers, and sometimes for silence. Sometimes you dream of leaving the palace, of returning to a life where a meal is earned, not bought, where a favor is freely given. But then you wake to the cold, the hunger, and the knowledge that here, at least, you understand the rules, even if they are ugly. You stash your coppers, you trade your secrets, you count every crust, and you remind yourself that survival is not a sin. In the end, you realize that bribery is not a flaw in the palace. It is its very foundation. The palace runs on bribes, the way a body runs on blood, and you are only another cell, scurrying from one artery to the next, hoping not to be noticed by the great, devouring heart at the center. Here, among the wealthy and the powerful, the game is always rigged, and the only way to lose is to stop playing. By now, you have learned to move quietly through the corridors, to slip through doors and shadowed arches with the unremarkable ease of someone who hopes to be invisible. Yet the longer you serve, the more you understand. In the palace, there is no such thing as true invisibility. The very walls seem to watch you, and each day, in some small way, you become a character in the endless play that is court life, a grand and grotesque theater where every gesture, every whisper, every nod is part of a performance staged not for art, but for survival and power. At first, you believed you were nothing more than a prop, a set piece in the background of the aristocracy's spectacle. You fetched, you bowed, you vanished into the shadows when the scene demanded it. But the palace has a way of pulling everyone onto the stage eventually. You notice it in the way courtiers glance at you as you pass, in the way you are called forward at feasts, in the way your silences begin to mean as much as your words. You are still a servant, but now you are a witness too, an unwilling actor with a part to play. Court politics is theater, but not the kind that ends with applause. There are no scripts, only improvised scenes where the lines change by the hour. You watch as noblemen smile at each other with mouths full of venom, as ladies laugh while plotting the ruin of rivals. The king plays the benevolent patriarch one day and the furious tyrant the next, always aware of the audience, always go demanding applause. Every word is a mask, every gesture a feint. You learn to recognize the rituals. There is the morning procession, when the courtiers parade before the monarch in carefully chosen finery, exchanging bows that look like genuflections and compliments sharp as knives. There are the debates in the great hall, where lords pretend to argue the fate of the realm, but really only trade favors and wounds in equal measure. You pour wine and observe the real currency change hands. Glances, nods, a murmured word behind a fan or a sleeve. You soon realize that you too are part of these dramas. When a lord wishes to insult a rival, he may ask you to deliver a message laced with sarcasm or cruelty. When a lady wishes to advance her cause, she gives you instructions that seem harmless, but that you sense are calculated for effect. You carry letters, tokens, even rumors, never knowing if you are the accomplice to a flirtation or a plot, to a harmless jest or a deadly game. Sometimes the spotlight lands directly on you. Perhaps you trip in front of the king, and laughter follows you for days. A running joke that reminds everyone of their own precarious position. Perhaps you are questioned about some missing object, and your answers become ammunition in a conflict you barely understand. The courtiers relish these moments. Your fear is their entertainment, your confusion their cue to smile wider. The play is endless, and there are no true allies. Even your fellow servants become actors, each with their own part to perform, their own secrets to keep. You see them gossip and plot, siding with one noble today and another tomorrow. Betrayals are casual, forgiveness non existent. If you are clever, you learn to play along, offering just enough of yourself to be useful, but never so much that you become indispensable. For everyone knows that the indispensable are the first to be sacrificed when the plot demands a twist. At the heart of it all is the knowledge that the theater of politics leads nowhere but down. You see it most clearly in the faces of those who have risen too high. The favorite who once sat at the monarch's right hand, now banished to a distant manor. The lady who was the queen's confidant, now ignored and shunned. The steward who miscalculated a bribe and found himself in chains. The applause never lasts. The crowd is always hungry for a new tragedy. You find yourself wondering, sometimes, if any of the courtiers are truly happy or if they simply perform contentment as another part in the show. Their smiles are brittle, their laughter forced, their pleasures fleeting. They watch each other constantly, ever wary of a rival's rise or a patron's fall. To be seen is both a blessing and a curse. To be unseen, an even greater danger. And what of you, the servant actor? You grow skilled at reading the scriptless scene. You know when to vanish, when to linger, when to offer a word of comfort or a glance of warning. You take pride in the small victories, delivering a message without being blamed, escaping notice when trouble brews, earning a nod of approval from a powerful patron. Yet, you also know that these are only temporary reprieves. The next scene always waits, and in the palace, the ending is always the same. Downfall is not a possibility, it is a certainty. No one remains at the top forever, and those at the bottom never truly leave the stage. You see the cycle play out again and again. The rise, the triumph, the envy, the betrayal, the fall. Sometimes it happens in a day, sometimes over years, but the script never changes. You are always one mistake, one missed cue, one misdelivered letter from disaster. There are nights when you lie awake and dream of a quieter life, a place where words mean what they say and gestures are not traps. But each morning you wake, don your costume, and step once more into the palace theater. The show must go on, and your role, unloved, unseen, unthanked, is essential to the tragedy. And so you perform, always knowing that the theater of politics ends only when you have nothing left to give but your exit. If ever there was a place where laughter should ring and music should soar, it is the palace. Every hallway is painted with murals of jesters and dancers. Every festival is promised as a celebration of joy. At least, this is what the stories say. In truth, the amusements and entertainments of the court are as hollow as a dried gourd, a display of happiness without substance, a never ending charade in which even the performers do not believe their own act. Your first taste of a grand entertainment comes on a festival night when the nobles gather in the great hall to celebrate the monarch's name day. The servants, yourself included, are ordered to scrub, polish, and decorate every visible inch of stone and wood. The work lasts days, your fingers rubbed raw from the effort, your muscles aching from moving tables, benches, and the mountains of tapestries needed to hide the cracks in the walls. Every corner must glitter, every step must gleam, or else the wrath of the stewards will fall upon your head. On the night itself, you watch as the court assembles, a parade of color and perfume, silks and jewels. The tables groan with food, the air shimmers with the sound of fiddles, lutes, and pipes. The nobles feast, drink, and pretend for a few hours that theirs is a life of endless pleasure. But you see the cracks in the performance. Their laughter is too loud, their smiles too fixed, their glances too sharp. The king, seated on his throne, receives flattery from every direction, but his eyes remain distant, never quite settling on any one face for long. As a lackey, you serve as backdrop to the festivities. You refill goblets, sweep up dropped crumbs, fetch forgotten handkerchiefs, and bear witness to the carefully staged happiness. You learn quickly that there is no place for your own amusement. Your laughter is only permitted if it enhances someone else's joke. Your presence only welcome if it is needed for a task. To enjoy yourself is to forget your place, and to forget your place is to risk everything. The amusements themselves are an odd collection of performances. Minstrels who sing the same tired songs, jesters who tell jokes no one finds funny, acrobats whose danger is only real for the low-born among them. There are dances, but they are rituals more than expressions of joy, each step dictated by tradition, every partner chosen for political convenience. You watch the nobles circle each other in stiff patterns, exchanging cold courtesies and false congratulations, their eyes always wandering, searching for the next scandal or the next victim. Sometimes the nobles create their own entertainment at the expense of those beneath them. You see servants pulled into the center of the hall and ordered to perform tricks, to sing songs, to recite poetry they have never learned. The penalty for refusal is humiliation, or worse. The penalty for success is mockery. No servant's song is ever truly applauded. You become an object of laughter, a reminder to the court that their misery is less than yours. The palace also hosts tournaments, supposedly tests of skill and bravery. The reality is much less noble. The favorites are chosen in advance. The losers are forgotten. Blood is spilled, sometimes for sport, sometimes by accident, always for the amusement of the privileged. You are sent to clean the lists after the games, collecting the broken weapons and wiping away the stains that no one wishes to remember. The victors strut and boast, but even their celebrations feel forced, a performance for the benefit of others, not for themselves. In quieter times, entertainment is more subdued, a game of chess, a hand of cards, gossip whispered behind a fan. Even here, you are not safe. Nobles quarrel over lost games, accuse each other of cheating, demand new amusements to distract from their endless boredom. The most dangerous form of entertainment is the one you cannot see, the cruel game of rumors and secrets, where lives are ruined with a careless word, and you, as a servant, are expected to laugh along or suffer the consequences. There are moments when music drifts through the palace, sweet and mournful, and you feel for a heartbeat something like hope. But these moments are rare, and they pass quickly, drowned out by the endless demands for more. More wine, more song, more distraction from the gnawing emptiness at the heart of court life. Sometimes the palace hosts traveling players, actors, and storytellers who bring with them tales from distant lands. For a brief hour, even the most jaded noble seems to forget their bitterness. You, standing at the edge of the hall, listen with longing to stories of love adventure, and freedom. When the show is over, the players are paid in coins, the servants in exhaustion, the nobles in temporary amusement. By morning, nothing has changed. It is easy to envy those who seem to enjoy the entertainments, the children of the court, the favored pets, even the monarch on his throne. But as you watch, you see the sameness in their eyes, the hunger for something real. You realize, in your own quiet way, that courtly pleasure is only an imitation of happiness, a mask to hide the boredom, the resentment, the fear. For you, the entertainments are a lesson in endurance. You learn to smile at jokes that are not funny, to applaud songs you do not hear, to dance when you are told, and to stop when you are ordered. You learn that happiness is not for people like you, not here, not ever. In the end, you become as much a performer as anyone else, applauding the farce, hiding your exhaustion, pretending that any of it matters. The show must go on, and you must play your part, even if the laughter is only an echo and the applause is only the sound of survival. If ever you held any illusions about the palace as a sanctuary of health and longevity, they are dispelled within your first few weeks. The palace is many things: grand, bustling, dangerous, exhausting, but clean is not among them, and healthy is merely an aspiration, never a reality. Disease moves through these corridors with the confidence of a noble, and when it claims another servant or even a noble child, the mourning lasts only as long as it takes to refill their place. Sickness in the palace is not an event, it is an environment, a condition of existence, as much a part of daily life as the endless labor and ceaseless fear. You are surrounded by it. Coughs echo down the corridors. A fevered flush lights the cheeks of the laundry maids, and rashes bloom on arms and necks like a warning. It starts with a sniffle, a little chill you might once have ignored, but in the palace, every small illness can become a matter of survival. The reasons for sickness are as numerous as the rats in the cellars. The water, drawn from barrels that double as watering holes for the stables, is cloudy and tastes of iron and mold. You drink sparingly, knowing that too much will turn your stomach, but you cannot afford to abstain. The food, already a gamble at the best of times, often hides the beginnings of rot or is chewed at the edges by unseen vermin. Freshness is a foreign word here. If it can be boiled or salted, it is considered good enough. You have watched, helpless, as a simple cough becomes a racking, endless agony. A cold turns into a fever that burns out the light in a fellow servant's eyes. There is no physician for your kind. The palace has a doctor, yes, but he serves the nobility, making his rounds with remedies and leeches only for those with titles or influence. For you, there is only the advice of older servants, home-brewed poultices and whispered prayers to saints whose names you barely remember. Injuries are more common than good meals. You trip on uneven stones, burn yourself on hot pans, cut your hands on broken glass, and always there are more tasks waiting. A limp or a wound is no excuse. The head butler does not believe in rest. If you cannot walk, you crawl. If you cannot work, you are sent to places where the work is even harder and where your absence is quickly forgotten if you should fail to return. It is a rare kindness if another servant helps you bandage a wound or shares a crust of bread dipped in vinegar for the pain. The nobles, for all their perfumed airs, are no less vulnerable. Illness cuts through ranks and titles without a care. When the pox comes, the courtiers scurry to their chambers, draping their faces with cloth soaked in vinegar and blaming the servants for bringing death through the doors. The irony is lost on no one. The same hands that serve their food, scrub their floors, and dress their wounds are the first to suffer, the first to die, and the last to be mourned. When disease spreads, the palace responds with predictable panic. Servants are locked in their quarters or sent out into the rain to air the sickness out. Some are never let back in. The priests are called to chant prayers, sprinkling holy water on doorways already streaked with the tears of those inside. The laundry is boiled. The kitchens are scrubbed until your hands bleed, but the fever still finds its way through every crack and crevice. There are rituals of care passed down from those who have survived the longest. You chew bitter roots for the pain in your belly, tie garlic around your neck to ward off the pestilence, and rub lard mixed with herbs onto festering sores. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does nothing at all. You watch as a friend grows pale and thin, refusing to lie down for fear of never rising again. You grieve quietly, knowing that grief is a luxury for those who have time to spare. You begin to fear not just death, but the way it arrives, slowly, with confusion and exhaustion, or quickly, with burning fever and frantic prayers. No one speaks of it openly. To do so is to tempt fate, to risk being shunned or dismissed for inviting misfortune. Instead, you nod at the news of another's passing and hope, foolishly, that you will be luckier. There is no rest for the ill. The work goes on, regardless of your condition. You drag yourself through each day, propped up by willpower and habit, knowing that to fall behind is to risk everything. Sleep, when it comes, is broken by coughing, the groans of others, and the terror of not waking. Night offers no comfort, only the cold press of stone and the certainty that tomorrow will be no better. The palace is full of ghosts, the memory of those who worked beside you, the echo of laughter now silenced, the traces of kindness shared in secret. Sometimes you see a shadow in a hallway, and for a heartbeat, believe it is a friend returned, only to remember, once again, how quickly the palace forgets. You learn to tend your own wounds, to save scraps of cloth for bandages, to steal a moment of sun when you can. You become grateful for small mercies, a night without fever, a kind word, a meal that does not sicken you. Health, you discover, is not a state of being, but a brief interlude between illnesses. Amid all this, the greatest disease is fear. It seeps into your bones, saps your strength and steals your hope. You live every day knowing that sickness is always waiting, as hungry and patient as the palace itself. And when it comes, as it always does, you hope only to endure it, or at least to vanish quietly, another body carried out at dawn. This is how you live amid sickness and fear, always surviving, never thriving, and always dreading the next shadow on the wall. If you were foolish enough to enter the palace with dreams of making friends, you quickly learn the folly of hope. The walls are too thin, the corridors too echoing, and every face, no matter how kindly it may appear in the candlelight, is trained in the art of survival. In this place, friendship is as fragile as a soap bubble and as dangerous as a slip on the palace stairs. Here, everyone is an enemy until proven otherwise, and even then, otherwise is a moving target. You learn early on that trust is not a currency anyone trades in openly. At first, there are moments when you believe you have found a friend, a fellow lackey who shares your hatred of the head butler, a kitchen maid who slips you a crust of bread, a stable boy who winks when the steward's back is turned. These alliances, if you can call them that, are built not on affection, but on mutual benefit. You watch each other's backs because there is no one else who will. Still, the desire for connection lingers. In the dark, cold nights, as you huddle on your straw mat, you long for a confidant, someone to whom you can whisper your fears, your hopes, your hunger. But every secret shared is a weapon in the making, and you quickly discover that even a casual remark can find its way to the wrong ears, twisted into an accusation or a rumor that spreads faster than fire in the hayloft. The greatest threat is not open hatred, but the silent rivalries that simmer beneath the surface. Every servant is a competitor for the smallest scrap of privilege, an extra spoonful of stew, a slightly softer bed, a lighter chore. Every day is a contest, every kindness measured and weighed, every compliment received with suspicion. You do not dare to relax, even in company. The stakes are too high. The few who dare to reach for real friendship learn quickly the price of failure. There was a girl once who took pity on you, shared her blanket on a freezing night, laughed at your jokes, cried when her brother was sent away. One day, the head butler accused her of theft. No evidence, no trial, only a whisper, a nod, and she was gone before you could say goodbye. You asked what happened, and the other servants shrugged. She was too soft, they said, as if that explained everything. Enemies, by contrast, are easier to identify. The ambitious footman who sneers at your clumsiness, the scullery maid who trips you in the corridor, then claims innocence with wide eyes, the steward who seems to delight in your suffering, always ready with a new punishment, a new humiliation. These people you avoid when possible, endure when necessary, and fear always. But the true enemies are not always the obvious ones. Sometimes it is the friend who smiles too often, the helper whose favors come with invisible strings, the confidant who asks too many questions about your opinions of the nobles. You see, after a while, that the palace breeds a particular kind of duplicity, the smiling betrayal, the friendly dagger in the back. You start to wonder if you are becoming like them, if the constant suspicion and guardedness are twisting you into something less than human. Amid this landscape of shifting alliances and hidden knives, you begin to realize a simple, crushing truth. Your only real ally is yourself. You are the only one who knows the whole truth of your actions, the only one who can be trusted not to trade your secrets for a few crumbs or a softer mat. You become your own confidant, rehearsing your thoughts in your head, never letting slip a word that could be used against you. If you are lucky, you find one person, just one, who proves an exception to the rule. Maybe it is the oldest kitchen maid, too tired to plot, who lets you sit by the fire without comment. Maybe it is the crippled stable boy, whose injuries have made him invisible even to the gossips. These are not friendships in the sense you once imagined, but silent understandings, a nod, a glance, a shared loaf on a bleak morning. You do not trust them with your life, but you might trust them with a secret, a warning, a silent plea for help. Even these fragile bonds can snap under the pressure of palace life. When food is short or punishment falls, every man and woman is for themselves. You watch, helpless, as alliances crumble, as kindnesses are repaid with betrayal. You stop blaming anyone. You understand now that the system is designed to keep you isolated, to ensure that no one is strong enough to resist, to rebel, or even to remember what friendship is supposed to feel like. There are times when you envy the nobles their elaborate friendships, their alliances and rivalries played out in plain sight, sanctioned by the rules of their cruel theater. But then you see how quickly a court favorite becomes a pariah, how easily smiles become sneers, and you remember that in this place, everyone is alone, no matter how crowded the room. So you move through the days and nights of palace life with your eyes open and your words few. You keep your secrets close and your enemies closer. You learn to read a room, to sense a mood, to offer just enough help to seem useful, but never so much that you risk yourself for another's cause. And when, at the end of a long, thankless day, you return to your cold mat in the darkness, you remind yourself that survival is victory, that solitude is strength, and that for now, your only true ally is the voice inside your own head. This is the reality of friendship and enmity at court. A solitary game in which everyone loses eventually, and the best you can hope for is to last a little longer before the music stops. By now, you understand that your life is not truly your own. The rhythm of each day is set by others, their whims, their hungers, their unending demands. The clock, if the palace even bothers with one, is not a device for your convenience. It is a weapon, a lash to drive you from task to task, a silent judge that always finds you wanting. You awaken before dawn, often before the cocks crow, pulled from fitful sleep by the bark of an overseer or the slap of cold air. There is no time for hesitation. You rise, dress, and are immediately swallowed by a list of tasks that grows longer with each step you take. If you were to write your schedule, it would be a parody of organization, each hour overfilled, every minute accounted for, every opportunity for rest stolen by the demands of your betters. Your morning begins in darkness. You stumble to the kitchens to help haul water from the well, heavy buckets that bruise your hands and leave your shoulders aching before the day has even begun. Fires must be lit, bread fetched from the ovens, the great hall aired out and swept. If the weather is foul, your work only increases. Mud and filth are tracked through every room, and you are expected to erase every trace, all before the nobles deign to appear. Breakfast is a rushed affair, not for you, but for those you serve. The highborn rise with the sun, expecting hot food, fresh linen, and an immaculate hall. You stand silently behind their chairs, ready to refill a goblet, clear a plate, or fetch whatever trifle strikes their fancy. You do not eat with them. You do not eat at all, not until their crumbs are swept away, their cups polished, and their complaints aired like soiled laundry. After breakfast, your duties splinter. One moment you are delivering messages, running from wing to wing, up and down drafty staircases, navigating a labyrinth of closed doors and hostile glances. The next, you are helping dress a lord or lady, holding out cloaks and jewelry, careful not to tangle laces or spill powders. The smallest mistake, a spot on a cuff, a dropped pin, can result in a day's punishment or a week's worth of scorn. There is no task too trivial for your time, no detail beneath your attention. You tend the fires, polish shoes, mend torn clothes, sweep corridors, fetch water, clean windows, dust tapestries, scrub flagstones, empty chamber pots, chase away dogs, and catch mice. You become so accustomed to being busy that any pause, however brief, feels unnatural, a dangerous luxury that draws suspicion. The nobles do not notice your exhaustion. They expect you to be invisible, but always available, silent unless spoken to, but instantly responsive to every whim. If a lady's shoes are missing, it is your fault. If the fire smokes, your fault. If a letter is delayed, if a child cries, if a dog escapes, if a draft creeps under a door, your fault, your fault, your fault. You develop an instinct for disaster, flinching at every raised voice, every snap of fingers, every sudden silence. Lunchtime brings no relief. It is another round of service, refilling plates, pouring wine, clearing dishes, all while standing so still your knees threaten to lock. If you are lucky, you steal a bite or two from the scraps left behind, but more often you wait for the servant's meager meal, knowing that by then you will have little appetite left, hunger numbed by fatigue and stress. Afternoons are reserved for the errands of court life. You deliver notes to mistresses and tailors, collect deliveries from the market, and fetch forgotten items from distant rooms. If the court is in session, you wait outside doors, ready to scurry at a moment's notice, fetching documents, finding quills, relaying messages that might be harmless or might, for all you know, be treasonous. You never ask questions. Curiosity is a vice you cannot afford. When the weather is fair, you might be sent to the gardens, hauling water for the plants, or trimming the hedges with shears so dull they might as well be spoons. If there is a hunt, you spend the day running after hounds, carrying back dead birds, and cleaning mud from boots so filthy you wonder if the nobles rolled in it for sport. If there is a feast, your schedule becomes a blur of sweat and panic. Your only reward, the hope that you might avoid notice. Evening brings its own torments. You help prepare the great hall for whatever entertainment is planned, a dance, a play, another interminable banquet. You light candles until your fingers blister, rearrange furniture to suit the taste of the moment, and stand ready to serve food and drink until the nobles stagger off to their beds. Only then do you clean again, sweeping away the debris of a day spent in someone else's celebration. When all is finally quiet, you return to your bed, a mat in a cold hallway, or a shared straw pallet in a stuffy attic. Your body aches, your mind is numb, and you drift into restless sleep, knowing that in a few hours the whole farce will begin again. You learn to measure your days not by accomplishment, but by survival. Did you avoid the butler's wrath? Did you escape the cook's bad side? Did you complete all your tasks before anyone noticed your existence? If so, you count it a success. If not, you grit your teeth and vow to do better tomorrow, though tomorrow brings only more of the same. Time, for the highborn, is an endless tapestry of luxury. For you, it is a chain. Each link is another task, another demand, another reminder that your hours and your very self belong to someone else. And as you lie awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, you wonder if there was ever a moment in all your days that truly belonged to you. This is the routine, the relentless schedule, the life stolen by minutes and demands. It is not life as you once imagined it, but it is the only life the palace allows you to have. There are moments when the palace, for all its filth and endless demands, feels almost insulated from the world outside. The high stone walls, the endless rules, the rigid schedules, all conspire to make you believe that nothing of true consequence happens beyond the reach of the royal gaze. Yet even the thickest walls cannot keep out war, nor shield you from the chaos it brings. In the end, every lackey, no matter how lowly, becomes a witness to both glory and ruin, and usually the latter far more than the former. You do not learn about war from the grand speeches or the colorful banners the monarchs so love to display. No, you learn about it the same way you learn everything else in the palace, through labor, fear, and the misery of others. When whispers of battle reach the court, everything changes. The nobles strut with new urgency, rehearsing their bravado for each other, while the servants brace for extra work and extra suffering. For every knight who prepares his shining armor, there are a dozen lackeys ordered to clean, mend, fetch, and run until their hands bleed. The days before a campaign are filled with frantic activity. You are tasked with packing supplies, cleaning and sharpening weapons, polishing boots, until you can see your own exhausted face reflected in the leather. Horses must be groomed, carriages repaired, banners stitched, and stores of food assembled. The kitchen becomes a war zone in itself, with cooks cursing at the chaos and demanding help at all hours. The noblemen, suddenly conscious of their bellies and boots, bark new orders, making you run from dawn to dusk and back again. The young lords boast of the glory they will win in battle, their voices echoing down the halls, but you see the trembling hands as they fumble with sword belts, the anxious glances they exchange when they think no one is looking. Their mothers and sisters hold secret vigils, lighting candles and whispering prayers, all the while pretending to be proud and unconcerned. The monarch stalks through the palace, alternately shouting at advisers and brooding in silence, while the courtiers gossip about who will return and who will not. When the army finally marches out, the palace is left quieter, colder, more dangerous. Those left behind, the old, the young, the unlucky, fill the void with their own schemes and rivalries. The remaining nobles sharpen their tongues on each other, and the servants, as always, bear the brunt of the unrest. Every absence is a new opportunity for blame. Every bad harvest, every sour cask of wine, every illness is blamed on the war, and by extension, on the lowest and least powerful. For you, war is never a distant, noble adventure. It is a new source of terror. Refugees arrive at the palace gates, ragged, hollow eyed, bringing stories of burning villages and slaughtered families. You are ordered to sweep them away, to keep the stench of misery from offending the high-born noses. Some slip into the kitchens, begging for scraps. You share what little you can, knowing that tomorrow there will be more mouths and fewer crumbs. Occasionally, you are called to serve at the War Council, a grand name for a roomful of frightened men shouting over each other. You pour wine, carry messages, clean up the spilled wax and dropped food. You listen, as always, without hearing, because nothing they say changes your fate. The strategies, the oaths of vengeance, the vows to defend the realm, these are not for you. You are only a shadow at the edge of the firelight, waiting for the next demand. Then comes the news from the front, never good, rarely honest. Letters arrive full of half truths and grand exaggerations. Victories are celebrated with feasts and drunken toasts, the court pretending to forget the cost. Defeats are met with silence, and suddenly everyone is looking for scapegoats. You learn to keep your head down, to blend into the walls, to avoid the wrath of those who need to blame someone, anyone, for the suffering they cannot escape. The wounded begin to return, silent and broken, eyes haunted by things you will never see. Some are nobles, given private rooms and soft beds, tended by the best healers the court can offer. Others are servants pressed into service as camp followers, now limping back with missing fingers, shattered knees, or worse. No one celebrates their homecoming. They are reminders of failure, of pain, of everything the court would rather forget. Sometimes you are pressed into new duties, helping to care for the injured, scrubbing blood from bandages, carrying away soiled linens, washing wounds with water that is never clean enough. You watch as men and boys cry out for mothers long dead, as young women sob for brothers lost, as the court tries to drown out the wails with music and dance. You become an expert at pretending not to hear. The only glory you ever witness is accidental, a glimpse of a banner raised, a parade staged for the monarch's pleasure, a medal pinned to a lord who spent the war drinking and boasting in the safety of the rear guard. The real victors, the survivors, go unnoticed. The real ruin lies in the faces of those who never truly return, who wander the palace like ghosts, forever outside the circle of light. And when finally the war is declared over, whether won, lost, or simply abandoned, the court resumes its play, pretending nothing has changed. The same games resume, the same intrigues, the same hunger. The bodies are buried, the wounded forgotten, the refugees driven out or left to rot in alleyways. You are expected to serve as before, your own scars invisible, your exhaustion unremarkable. The palace returns to its rhythms, but something has changed. The laughter is more brittle, the eyes more wary, the shadows longer. You move through the corridors with the memory of marching feet and distant screams, knowing that peace is only a pause between storms. War is the ultimate entertainment of the palace, a spectacle staged at the cost of lives you are never meant to count. You bear witness to glory, yes, but only as a backdrop to ruin, your own place unchanged, your own survival as uncertain as ever. This, too, is court life, serving in the shadow of war, enduring the pageant of glory, and picking up the pieces when the banners fall. If the palace is a stage, then death is its ever present shadow, the only certainty in a place devoted to pretense and denial. You are never allowed to forget it, not for a day, not for an hour. It lurks at the bottom of every staircase, behind every closed door, in every cup of wine that tastes slightly bitter, or every letter that arrives sealed in black wax. In the village, death was a rare event, marked by wailing and candles, neighbors gathering to mourn. Here, it is a routine, unremarkable as sweeping the floor, as unremarkable as you. The courtiers make a performance of death, as they do of everything. A noble collapses at a feast, face turning blue as a peacock's feather. Whispers and speculation fill the hall before his body is even cold. Was it poison, a curse, the revenge of a jealous lover, a simple, unlucky turn of the heart? The truth rarely matters. The servants remove the corpse quietly, scrubbing away the stains before dawn. By breakfast, a new name is already spoken in his place, a new plot hatching, a new joke making the rounds about the departed's last unfortunate expression. If you, a lackey, should die, the effect is even less. There is no ceremony, no notice. One day you are there, the next your mat is empty, your meager possessions picked over by your fellows, or more often, claimed by your overseer. The kitchen will be short-handed for a week. The laundry runs slower, but life at the palace does not pause. You are not a tragedy. You are nothing at all. Your name is forgotten before the dust settles. Disaster comes in many forms. A kitchen fire that smokes half the east wing, a fever that sweeps through the servants' quarters, a sudden collapse of a crumbling balcony. Sometimes it is public. A noble's carriage overturns on a muddy road, or a hunting accident claims a favored knight. More often, it is hidden. A maid found floating in the moat, a footman simply missing after nightfall, a child's shoes lined up neatly by a door no one dares open. The official stories are neat and tidy, but the truth, if it ever comes out, is always uglier. Fear of death becomes part of your daily routine, as familiar as hunger or exhaustion. You look at every cup and wonder if it was meant for you. You hear a cough in the dark and count the days until you hear it no more. You see the looks exchanged by courtiers, cold, measured, predatory, and know that even the highborn are not immune, just more practiced at hiding their terror. Death at court is democratic. It takes what it wants, when it wants, and cares nothing for rank or prayers. You come to understand that at court, every death is a warning and every disaster a lesson. You learn to recognize the subtle signs. The sudden chill in a hallway, the hush that falls before bad news is delivered, the nervous laughter that follows a noble's collapse. You learn, too, to step lightly around disaster, to avoid lingering in empty corridors, to keep your eyes down and your mouth closed when tempers flare. Every day survived is a minor victory, every avoided calamity a miracle. There are superstitions, of course. The older servants whisper about ghosts in the west wing, about cursed rooms and forbidden stairways. Some wear amulets, some refuse to speak certain names after dark, others rub the threshold 3 times before entering a room. You follow their rituals, not because you believe, but because in a place where death is a neighbor, you take whatever comfort you can find. You see how quickly disaster is repackaged as opportunity. When a noble falls, rivals rush to claim their rooms, their titles, their favorite servants. A tragedy is never allowed to pass without someone benefiting. Even among the servants, there is no mourning without calculation. The death of a rival is a chance to move up, to claim a warmer bed, to inherit a slightly less miserable chore. Grief, here, is something you must conceal or else risk appearing weak, and weakness is as good as a death sentence. You are often called upon to clean up the aftermath, to scrub blood from the flagstones, to bundle up the clothes of the departed, to serve at memorial banquets where the wine flows freely and no one mentions the empty chair at the table. You learn to wipe away every sign of disaster, to leave no trace that anything has changed. If you are lucky, the work distracts you from your own fear. If you are not, it simply adds to the tally of nightmares you carry. On rare occasions, disaster strikes the whole palace. A great fire, a siege, an outbreak of plague. Then, even the highborn learn what it means to be disposable. Panic spreads like oil on water. Loyalty and rank dissolve in the scramble for survival. You see lords begging for help, queens weeping for lost children, courtiers praying as if for the first time in their lives. In those moments, you glimpse the truth beneath all the pageantry. Every life here is fragile, every triumph temporary, every comfort conditional. In the end, you understand that at court, death and disaster are not merely endings, they are reminders, a silent, persistent drumbeat that underscores every hour. They remind you of your own insignificance, your replaceability, the impossibility of legacy. The only certainty is that sooner or later, the palace will swallow your name, your memory, your body, and move on as if you never existed. You wonder sometimes, lying on your thin mat in the dark, if anyone will remember you when you are gone. You suspect the answer is no. In this place, tragedy is a luxury reserved for the powerful. For everyone else, there is only silence and forgetting. You entered the palace with a secret belief, unspoken, almost unconscious, that something might improve, if not for everyone, then at least for you. Surely, you reasoned, hard work would be noticed. Surely, kindness would be remembered, talent rewarded, suffering alleviated. Yet after all these years, after every humiliation, after every fever and wound, every bribe and betrayal, you are forced to confront the cruelest truth the palace has to offer. Nothing here ever really changes. Not the walls, not the faces, not the endless, grinding routines, especially not your own place in it all. Change is the rumor that flutters down the halls but never lands. Once there was excitement, a new king, a wedding, a baby born to the royal house. For a moment, the air shimmered with hope, as if the palace itself might exhale and shift. Servants whispered of reforms, of better food, lighter burdens, justice from the throne. But within days, the old rhythms returned. The same courtiers held the same keys to the same locks. The new king quickly learned the comfort of old cruelty. The wedding feast left only new stains for you to clean. The baby's cries faded into the general din. Nothing changed. You watch as faces age and vanish, as new lackeys take up the same worn brooms, kneel on the same flagstones, shiver on the same straw mats. It becomes hard to remember the names of those who leave. Was it Thomas or Philip, who always sang at dawn, or Marjorie or Joan, who used to slip you crusts? Their replacements look the same, act the same, quickly absorb the lessons of silence and obedience. The palace swallows people, spits out ghosts, and never loses its appetite. The nobles, too, are stuck in a slow, poisonous dance. They grow older, fatter, more suspicious, clutching their titles and their grudges. Now and then, a favorite rises, a new lover, a clever courtier, a bold captain. But their ascent only sharpens the knives around them. Sooner or later, They are cast down, their rooms emptied, their memory rewritten into another cautionary tale. The courtiers who survive do so by never changing at all, by perfecting the art of being just important enough to avoid notice and just harmless enough to escape blame. You realize, slowly, painfully, that the palace thrives on the illusion of change. There are always new decrees, new holidays, new faces to fawn over, new disasters to survive. But underneath, the same machinery grinds on. You remember how, as a child, you watched ants swarming over a dead beetle, so busy, so purposeful, yet always ending up in the same dirt. The palace is like that, only with better clothes and worse intentions. Even rebellion is swallowed whole. Once, a rumor spread among the servants, a plan to demand better food, shorter hours, honest wages. The leaders were bold, angry, even hopeful. You hesitated, wanting to believe. Within a week, the ringleaders were gone, their names struck from the rolls, their fates left unspoken. The rest of you fell into line, your hope replaced by a sharper, more useful emotion: caution. The food did not improve, the hours did not shorten, nothing changed. You see it in your own face, reflected in a copper pot as you polish for the 100th time. The lines have deepened, the eyes grown wary, the mouth set in a shape that is neither smile nor frown. You move as your elders did, silent, efficient, uncomplaining. Your dreams have shrunk to the size of a safe day, a warm meal, an unremarkable week. Hope, like hunger, is a sensation you try not to notice too often. Now and then, you witness a new lackey burning with ambition, or fresh from some village with tales of justice and fairness. You almost envy them, their innocence, their certainty that effort must yield reward. You watch as they labor and flatter, as they try to catch a noble's eye or win a cook's favor. Inevitably, the palace wears them down, as it wore you down, as it will wear down all who come after. Their laughter becomes quieter, their faces more careful, their steps heavier. There are moments of clarity, usually in the deep, dead hours of the night, when the palace sleeps and you are left alone with your thoughts, when you wonder why you ever hoped for more. You realize that all your efforts, all your cleverness, all your endurance have changed nothing. The same cold dawns, the same biting hunger, the same petty cruelties repeat without end. The palace is not merely a place. It is a story with no new chapters, a song with no new verse, an endless grinding repetition that devours hope and spits out despair. You no longer look for escape. There is nowhere to go, nowhere better. The village is gone, the world outside is even harsher, and the palace, despite its filth and misery, is at least familiar. You cling to routine not because it is good, but because it is unchanging. The only certainty you possess is that tomorrow will be the same as today, and the day after will follow suit. So you rise, you serve, you endure, knowing that your efforts do not matter, knowing that, in the grand ledger of the palace, your line will end as it began. unnoticed, unremarkable, utterly unchanged. The futility of hope is your only reliable companion. And even that, you realize, is just another thing the palace will never let go. At the end of it all, as the years trickle past like water through a cracked cistern, you begin to see the final irony of palace life. It is not that you failed to change anything, it is that you, despite every intention, have become a part of the very system you once despised. You no longer even notice the endless parade of new faces. Each new lackey enters with the same anxious posture and quickly learns the language of obedience. You watch them struggle, stumble, and eventually accept. Sometimes you catch yourself offering advice. Keep your head down. Answer only what is asked. Never eat before the nobles are done. You hear your own words echo those of the elders who came before you. The advice is not kind, nor is it cruel. It is simply what is required to survive. You notice how your hands move on their own now, scrubbing, carrying, bowing, always anticipating the needs of others. Your body has grown used to the aches and wounds, the constant bruises that no longer register as pain. Even your hunger feels dull, more memory than sensation. You know precisely when to speak and when to be silent, how to disappear when tempers flare, and how to reappear just as quickly when someone with power calls for you. What you once resented as humiliation has become habit. You take pride of a sort in your efficiency. If the head butler barks a command, you are already moving before his words are finished. You judge yourself by the smoothness of a banquet, the shine of a boot, the absence of complaint from the nobles. You realize that somewhere along the way, you stopped imagining a life beyond these walls. The palace is not your prison. It is your world. The customs that once seemed strange and arbitrary are now as natural as breathing. You help enforce them without thinking. When a new servant forgets to bow, you tug their sleeve. When someone dares to dream out loud of a different life, you shake your head and remind them how dangerous hope can be. You tell yourself this is kindness, that you are saving them from disappointment. Perhaps it is true. Perhaps it is just the voice of the palace speaking through you. Sometimes you catch glimpses of the larger machinery. You see how the endless system of bribes, favors, threats, and silences sustains itself, how the nobles' games rely on the quiet compliance of people like you. You understand now that the endless repetition is not a flaw, but a design. The palace does not want heroes or martyrs. It wants servants who know their place and keep others in theirs. In time, you realize even rebellion has its place as a warning, a story to frighten the hopeful into obedience. The courtiers, for all their power, are as bound to the system as you are. You have seen them punished, discarded, broken by the same rules they help enforce. You no longer envy them. Their gold, their titles, their endless posturing, all of it serves the same purpose: to keep the wheel turning, to ensure nothing ever truly changes. There are moments of clarity, rare as honest laughter in the great hall, when you remember the person you were before. You recall the dreams of escape, the hope of recognition, the desperate need for something more. But these memories are faint now, washed thin by years of routine and repetition. If you meet your reflection in a polished pan or a bucket of water, you hardly recognize the face that looks back, a face shaped by caution, endurance, and resignation. Sometimes you wonder if you could have done anything differently, if you should have spoken out, or fled, or simply refused to bend. But you know, in your heart, that the system does not allow for such choices. Those who try are chewed up and forgotten. The palace is older than any of you, and it always wins in the end. You do not know how your story will end. Perhaps you will slip away quietly, one more name crossed off a ledger. Perhaps you will linger long enough to become the elder who teaches the next generation how to survive. But you know that in the end, the palace will remain unchanged as it always has. In your last quiet moments, on a rare evening when the fires burn low and no one calls your name, you allow yourself a final, bitter smile. You have not escaped. You have not triumphed. You have not even failed. You have simply become what the palace needed you to be. And so you are part of the system. You enforce it, endure it, and in some small way, you are now one of its guardians. The endless grinding cycle continues, fed by the dreams of the young, the resignation of the old, and the silence of those who have learned to survive. The palace remains, beautiful, filthy, unchanged, and eternal. Your life is but one thread in its tapestry, gray, frayed, easily replaced, but essential nonetheless. This, you understand at last, is the final trick of history. Not that misery persists, but that, in surviving it, you help it endure. And as another day begins, you rise, you bow, and you carry on. Part of the system, a silent witness, a servant to a world that was always meant to outlast you.